Today we're going to do a floral acrylic painting on a 4x4 inch canvas. So I'm starting with some photos that I took, and I'm just cropping them into a square in a composition I like. And pardon me, I did this painting and recorded this a couple months ago. So if I might actually have some questions about what I'm actually doing here. I might not remember everything. So here I am measuring my picture. I chose in my Photoshop, and this video isn't about that, but I just made it into a 4x4 to match the size of the canvas. And instead of freehanding it, I'm putting some guidelines down with just a 2-inch grid. So it's basically just cut into quarters. All right, and this does take some time, but especially for a more complicated painting, it does help to get your accuracy in your drawing. All right, so I got these this 9-pack at Michael's, I think, and they often have good deals. This is like buy one get one free. They aren't the highest quality, but for the small size, it doesn't really matter. It mostly matters for larger sizes to make sure that it hangs properly, that the wood frame isn't going to warp. So I'm very happy with these Michael's brand. They do have like 3 different quality levels, basic, beginner, and these are, I think, the highest quality ones they make. All right, so as you can see, I'm just putting the grid with a pencil right on my canvas, and then I'm going to paint over that. I'm going to keep the background going. So I am right now talking over the original video. And I'm sorry, I don't think that it's in the camera what I'm doing, but I'm sure I'm just drawing the flowers at this point. And so the nice thing about the grid, if you watch some of my previous drawing videos, you can focus on the negative space. If it's difficult if you think you're having troubles with the exact placement or proportions, then a lot of times it's easier to focus on the negative space. Usually the negative space takes up less space, so it's a smaller bite of the elephant, I guess you could say, to handle. I found sometimes if it's very, very complicated, that I will even, for example, with florals, use a green colored pencil for the leaves so that I can tell what's a leaf and what's a petal. And especially because on the canvas, when you're drawing on a canvas, it's kind of bumpy and you get like a pixelated drawing and it can get really confusing. But I just use a regular pencil, and look, it looks like I'm erasing the rest of the grid lines. They probably wouldn't show up in my acrylic painting. They definitely could on a watercolor, so you know, I do erase most of the time, as much as I can. You can't always get everything. All right, some people have asked why I'm using paper plates, like they think it's weird, but with acrylic paints, a lot of times I'll use paper plates because they're disposable and it's just easy cleanup, and they have a rim so that if you're using a really watery mix, then it's not going to drip off and get everywhere. I also maybe will have 2 or 3 going at the same time. I'll have one for blacks and whites, and then for different colors I might have different mixtures on different ones. But this isn't really part of the video, it's just what I'm doing. Feel free to use whatever kind of palette you want for your acrylic painting. Sometimes I use disposable palettes. I really don't like cleaning a glass palette when it comes to the acrylic. Some people like that, but I don't like that. So it looks like I'm using right here black and white, and I think like a Jenkins or Hooker's green, and some sort of iron oxide. Okay, so that's a pink, it's a quinacridone red, and a lighter pink that it's kind of like a gray pink. So I am going to add those, I think, to another palette. But let's get started here with mixing up, I think, probably the black and the white. And I'm just going to make a few mixtures to get started and paint. Well, I've been reading a book called Controlled Painting by Frank Covino, and he talks about how one reason a lot of these ateliers will have their students paint in just black and white for a year and then add one other color like ochre after a year is because when you're painting in realism instead of abstraction, then the black and white is basically the foundation if you're thinking of building a house, and then the color doesn't, it goes on later. It's kind of like the decoration for the rooms once you've built everything. So you can think of that the same with painting, because we've had black and white TV forever, or black and white photos, and so people can still understand what you're trying to convey in black and white. And so the color is just the overlay over the top of that. It could even just be a simple glaze. So I've been actually starting to use more black and white in my and starting a lot of my paintings. Not always. A lot of times I will, like if I want to paint a cardinal, I might put down an underwash of red or pink or something to layer colors instead of the black and white. I really want that really deep, saturated, and in-depth color layers. So yeah, it does depend, and that's the nice thing about art is there's so much freedom in it to express yourself and experiment. So mixing the darks now, it looks like the black I'm mixing into the brown or the iron oxide and the green. And what I'm using here are the fluids by Golden, and then they have in the tubes are the thicker paints. I forget what they're called. I like using both. I think that for the darker colors, I like to have a nice collection of the fluids because they're already watered down. You don't need to add more water. Plus, I think they're more pigmented than if you were to add water to the thicker paints. All right, looks like we're kind of tight on space here, but oh gosh, I hope you can see this. All right, well, it's not all the way in view. Let me see if I can skip over this. Hang on. All right, it looks like I did pull it up right here, but I did decide to double time the speed on this section just to, I don't think we need to watch me paint in real time. So we're putting in the dark iron oxide and a little bit of the dark green in the background. And I think a lot of times when it comes to acrylic and oil paint, I'll start with darker paints, maybe not the absolute darkest, but the darker shades, and then work my way up to the highlights. And in watercolor, I go the opposite. I start with the highlights and where I want the lightest parts of the painting, because with the you can't add white back in, so I have to decide where my highlights are going to be with the watercolor right at the beginning. All right, so yeah, we're doing a lot of different shades of gray for the flowers, which are mostly white with like a tinge of pink. And then you have the pinker center. But right now I'm also, as I mentioned, mostly doing the black and white values. And if you can do up to 10 values or shades and have them evenly spaced, that's what a lot of artists suggest, and that's what Frank Covino suggests in his book, and what he got that idea from Da Vinci. So yeah, I'm going ahead and putting some paint on the sides here. It looks like a pale green. You don't always have to paint the sides of canvases. Some people like the clean look, especially if they're not planning to paint it or frame it. But there is I think a school of thought that having a rougher edge shows exactly what you did, and to me, it just like looking under the hood at what the workings of the painting are. So sometimes I have left the edges unpainted, but there'll be like a splash over or spillover from my work.
We're gonna
and I think that's kind of interesting.
With,
okay, so the nice thing about acrylic paint is it does dry so fast. There are some mediums you can use to slow down the dry time.
We'll do the
but one of the benefits of our oil paint is that it does dry fast. So you can, especially if you're wanting to work in layers, get a lot done in a short amount of time. So it looks like I'm doing more of the black and white layers.
Queen of Credoon.
Okay, with a touch of pink. That one might be kind of dried out. So one thing that helps, that I've learned, I don't have it here, but if you have a pair of needle nose pliers, you can sometimes go in and grab the dried out section, and oh, I have some. So exactly like this. Just go in and try to yank it out. Let's see if I got it all. Yeah, that's acrylics. I mean, oils can dry as well in the tube, but acrylics, you got to keep the threads around the top opening clean, so that the cap will screw on airtight. All right, well, this is probably a section I should have gone a little faster through. Let me see if I can stop it. Hang on. Okay, well, I sped up this section by double, so it should go a little faster. So here I'm spraying down some water on the paints to help them stay wet. Looks like I'm almost out of that dark green, and this is a little more of an ochre, some sort of transparent ochre. Sorry, I don't have the two. I'm not by my studio. I don't know what color that was exactly. But it's good when painting natural things to have a lot of the natural pigments like the iron oxides, ochre, anything with bone or, oh, I'm thinking. Well, I mean, you can just tell by looking at it if it's a very vibrant color. It's good for flowers, but a lot of the more neutral colors and toned down earthy colors I think are good to have. If you're painting nature, landscapes, even figures, because you know we don't have a lot. It's not, unless you're painting in a style that's more cartoon-like. Alright, so I've got a nice mix of colors for the magnolias. And I know this is a pink that straight out of the tube is this color, so I'm just trying to lighten it up. It's a brand out of Australia, I forget the name, and I think it's like called, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a grayish pink color. Alright, so I'm using a flat brush to get the little stamens or whatever you call them in the middle of the flower. I use a lot of flat or filbert brushes, and then I'll use a round brush sometimes. I could have done those stamens with a round, like a small round brush also, but sometimes if it's just a straight line especially, I like the flat brush better because it'll make a thin line without a depression in the middle of it, which the round brush sometimes leaves. Alright, so we're definitely doing the highlights now, so it's just like the whitest pink mixture I have. And this isn't maybe exact. I just try to glance at the photo and what is really popping out or standing out to me, I will try to paint that and represent that. But I'm not, this isn't hyper-realism. I like to see a lot of thick brush strokes, and especially the background is going to be a lot more abstract. It's like we're back to real time here in this clip. But we are almost done, and I will make a note that I will show a photo at the very end, and I did go in with oil paint and add a couple, I think a little bit of a transparent oxide glaze and a little bit of green to the leaves with oil paint. And it is a nice thing about acrylic paint is you can paint with oil paint on top of it. You'll just have to wait for the oil paint to dry before varnishing it, like a lot longer, like several months. Anyway, I like that color on the sides, and on these ones I do, because the side is so much a part of the painting and the proportions, I did paint the sides. And it's already sold actually. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments.